Caught my wife with the gardener on our anniversary. My keys hit the floor before my brain caught up. I heard it before I saw it. That's the thing nobody tells you about the worst moments of your life. They announce themselves with sound first. A laugh, low and soft, coming from upstairs. Our bedroom. I had left work early. 2 hours early. I had the restaurant reservation in my pocket. Folded paper, printed, because she always said she liked when I put in real effort instead of just texting a link. 14 years. I had booked the same restaurant where I proposed. I had called ahead and asked them to put a single candle on the table before we sat down. I stood in the hallway of my own house and listened to my wife laugh at something a man said. I didn't move for 6 seconds. I counted them. Not because I was calm. Because my body refused to carry me up those stairs and my mind was still trying to build an explanation that didn't destroy everything. I couldn't. The stairs didn't creak. They never did. We had renovated this house together years ago, and I remembered standing in a showroom arguing about hardwood versus engineered flooring, and she had won, and I had been glad she won because the floors were beautiful, and now those beautiful floors were carrying me silently towards something I could not undo. The door was open 6 inches. 6 inches was enough. I saw his back first. Dark hair, wide shoulders, the t-shirt he always wore when he came on Thursdays to do the yard. I knew that t-shirt. I had handed the man a check every month for 2 years. I had shaken his hand. I had offered him water on hot days because I thought that's what decent people did. And then I saw her face. Her eyes were closed. Her hand was in his hair. And she had an expression I had not seen in a very long time. The kind that doesn't perform itself, the kind that doesn't know anyone is watching. I pushed the door open. It hit the wall like a gunshot. She screamed. He rolled. Sheets pulled. Bodies scrambled. And for a single suspended second, all 3 of us existed in the same suffocating room, and nobody made a sound. Then she said my name. Daniel. Not a question. Not an apology. Just my name, like saying it out loud would somehow organize what was happening into something manageable. Like my name was a life preserver, and she was already deciding whether to grab it. I looked at him. He was already looking for his shirt. He found it on the floor and pulled it over his head, and I watched him do it like I was watching a movie about someone else's life because my own life had stopped making sense approximately 90 seconds ago. Get out, I said. I said it to him. I said it quietly. He didn't need to be told twice. He moved past me in the doorway, and I smelled the same deodorant he probably wore every Thursday when he rang my doorbell, and I signed his checks and told him the hedges were looking great. I heard him take the stairs. I heard the front door close. Then there was nothing in the room but us. She had pulled the sheet up around her shoulders like it could protect her from what was already happening. Her hair was down. She never wore her hair down on weekdays. I had always loved her hair down. Daniel, please. Don't. The word came out flat. Controlled. I didn't know where the control was coming from, but I held on to it because I could feel exactly what was waiting on the other side of it, and I was not ready for that yet. Maybe I would never be ready for that. I reached into my jacket pocket, took out the folded reservation, set it on the dresser, on top of her perfume bottles, next to the photo of us at a beach in Portugal that we had taken on our 5th anniversary and framed ourselves because we thought that was romantic. She looked at the paper. I watched her face break. Good. I needed to see it break. I needed to know she still understood what she had just destroyed. How long, I said. It wasn't a question the way normal questions are questions. It was a sentence I needed her to complete because I needed a number to attach to this thing, and then maybe I could put it somewhere manageable in my head. She didn't answer fast enough. How long, Sarah? 4 months. Her voice barely made it across the room. 4 months. I did the math automatically. The way your brain does things you don't ask it to. 4 months ago was October. October was when she had started going to the gym on Thursday mornings. October was when she had started wearing perfume on days she wasn't going anywhere. October was when she had seemed, and this was the word that landed on me like a piece of ceiling falling, happier. I had noticed her being happier. I had thanked God for it. I had thought we were coming out the other side of a rough patch, and I had been so relieved I hadn't asked too many questions because I didn't want to disturb whatever was working. Did you love him? I said. The pause before she answered was its own kind of answer. No, she said. Daniel, no. It wasn't that. Then what was it? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and what came out was the thing I would turn over in my head for the next 11 months of my life. Not because it was satisfying, but because it was true, and truth doesn't care whether you're ready for it. I felt invisible, she said. I felt invisible for 3 years, and I didn't know how to tell you. And he was there. 3 years. I had been standing in the same house as my wife's loneliness for 3 years and had not seen it. I had worked 60-hour weeks and thought I was providing and thought that was love and thought that was enough, and not once had I sat down and asked her what she actually needed from me right now. In this year, in this version of our lives. None of that made what I saw in this room okay. None of it made her less wrong. But it made me less clean than I needed to be right now. I picked up the reservation off the dresser. I folded it again. I didn't know why. Muscle memory. My hands needed something to do while my life reorganized itself without my permission. I'm going to go downstairs, I said. You need to call someone and figure out where you're going to stay tonight. Daniel, I cannot be in this room right now, Sarah. I am asking you to hear that. I made it to the door. My hand hit the frame. She said, I'm sorry. And then she said, I know that means nothing right now. She was right. It meant nothing right now. But the problem with sorry is it doesn't mean nothing. It means something complicated and unresolved and human. And that was almost worse. I went downstairs. I sat in the kitchen. In the chair I always sat in. At the table where we had eaten 14 years of dinners. I put my head in my hands and I didn't cry because I couldn't locate the grief yet through all the noise, the anger and the arithmetic of 4 months, and the image I couldn't stop seeing and the sound of that laugh I had heard from the bottom of the stairs. My phone buzzed. Restaurant confirmation. 7 o'clock reservation for Daniel and Sarah. We're looking forward to celebrating your special evening with you. I put the phone face down on the table. 40 minutes later, I heard her come down the stairs. She had a bag. She had changed. She looked like someone who had practiced looking composed and hadn't quite managed it. She stopped in the kitchen doorway. My sister's coming, she said. I nodded. She stood there another moment like there was something else, some sentence that could do something useful in this room. And then she seemed to understand there wasn't one. She went to the front door, her hand on the handle. Daniel. She turned back once. I looked at her. You were never invisible to me, she said. I need you to know that. Whatever you decide, I need you to know that. The door closed. The house was quiet in a way houses only get quiet when they've just changed into something else. Not empty. Changed. Like the walls had absorbed everything and were now deciding what kind of silence to become. I sat in that kitchen for 2 hours. I thought about my father, who had stayed after my mother did the same thing. Different man, same story, and who had turned into someone quieter and harder every year until the quiet and the hard was just who he was, and we stopped expecting anything warmer. I had watched him choose to stay, and I had watched what staying cost him, and I had told myself at 17 years old that I would never pay that price. I thought about 14 years, which is not a small number, which is not a thing you put down without feeling the weight of it leave your hands. I thought about what she had said, invisible for 3 years. And I thought about every time she had tried to start a conversation late at night, and I had said tomorrow, I'm exhausted, tomorrow, and how there is a kind of abandonment that wears the costume of stability, and I had worn that costume so long I had forgotten it was a costume. None of that made what she did okay. None of it made me okay either. I called my brother at 10 o'clock. He answered on the second ring because that's what he did. He had always answered on the second ring for 38 years of my life, and I had never told him how much that meant to me, because we were men who didn't say that kind of thing to each other, and maybe that was part of the problem too. Maybe the silence we were trained into was everywhere, in our marriages and our friendships and our kitchens and our beds. She cheated, I said. No setup. He didn't need one. He was quiet for a moment. Then, where are you? Home. I'm coming. You don't have to. Daniel. His voice was the voice he had used when our father had died, and I had stood at the graveside not crying and not speaking, and he had put a hand on my shoulder and just stood there until the cold got too much. The same voice. I'm coming. He sat with me until 2 in the morning. We didn't talk about it the way people talk about things in movies, with revelations and organized feelings and a clear path forward. We watched a game neither of us was watching. We ordered food neither of us tasted. And at some point he said, whatever you decide, that's the right decision. And I understood that he meant it in both directions without saying both directions out loud. When he left, I went upstairs. I stood in the bedroom doorway for a long time. The sheets were still pulled back. I couldn't sleep in there. I went back down and slept on the couch. which I had not done in 14 years, and I stared at the ceiling, and I let myself feel all of it. The grief and the rage, and underneath both of those something smaller and more shameful that I didn't want to name. I named it anyway. In the dark. With no one listening. Relief. Not that she had cheated. Never that. But relief that the distance I had felt for 3 years had a name now. That the thing I had blamed on stress and time and the normal erosion of long marriages had been real. That I hadn't imagined it. That I had not been crazy for feeling it even while I told myself we were fine. We had not been fine. And now at least we both knew we had not been fine. That is not the same as it being okay. That is not the same as forgiving it. But it was true. The divorce was filed 4 months later. Mediated. Quiet. The way things end when both people are too tired for war and too honest to pretend the war wouldn't cost more than either of them had left. She tried 3 times to talk about counseling. The first time I said no without discussion. The second time I sat with it. For a week before I said no. The third time I sat with it for 3 weeks. I said no. But the third time I also said, I believe you that you were lonely. I need you to believe me that it wasn't enough of a reason. She said she did. I don't know if believing her that she believed me was a kindness or just the last courtesy I had left to give. I sold the house. Couldn't keep it. Every room had a memory, and every memory had been altered, like someone had gone through a photo album and drawn a shadow over every image. The images were still there, but they were different now. They would always be different now. I think about my father sometimes. Who stayed? Who turned hard? I think about whether leaving made me more like him or less like him. I think about whether the quiet I carry now is the same quiet he carried or something else, something I can still choose to put down. I don't know the answer to that yet. Here is what I do know. I know that 2 people can both be telling the truth and still have destroyed each other. I know that loneliness inside a marriage is real and dangerous, and that ignoring someone who is right next to you is a choice even when it doesn't feel like one. I know that betrayal doesn't cancel out neglect, and neglect doesn't cancel out betrayal, and the court that tries to weigh them against each other never reaches a verdict both people can live with. I know that the reservation is still in the pocket of that jacket. I have not thrown it away. I don't entirely know why. Maybe because throwing it away means deciding what it was, and I have not decided yet whether it was the last thing I did right or the last thing that went wrong between us. Maybe it was both. Maybe. That's the only honest answer available. So here is the question I'm left with. The one I'm handing to you because I've turned it over long enough alone. If someone you love has been quietly disappearing in front of you for 3 years, not dramatically, not with ultimatums or tears or conversations you could point to, but simply going somewhere else inside themselves while life continued on the surface, and they eventually make the worst choice. Instead of the hard conversation, how much of that is on them? And how much of that is on you? And what exactly is the difference between a reason and an excuse? And when you figure out that difference, does it change what you owe them? Does it change what you owe yourself? I'm asking because I still don't know. And I'm starting to think that not knowing is the most human part of this whole story.